Good morning. Well, I'd like to welcome you all to the Cook County Board of Commissioners regular meeting today, Tuesday, January 10th of 2023. And if we'd stand at this point in time for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So do we have any adjustments to this morning's agenda? Any changes or adjustments to the agenda? Seeing or hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda as written?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. We have a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We now have our public comment period, which is an opportunity for our citizens to appear before the county board. I do not see anyone out in front of us. Does anyone have any written comments that they've received via email? All right.
Do not.
We will move on then to our consent agenda. Is there any item that a commissioner would like to pull?
Now the meeting can start.
The coffee has arrived.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
All right. With no, nothing being pulled from the agenda for consent, is there a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner White. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're on to our Highway Department, and this morning we have Robbie Hass with us, our highway engineer, to talk about the Cook County Salt Sand Storage Building Contract Award.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Commissioners. Hello. So if you remember, we had talked about this last year, and we had put this exact same building out for bid, and it was a little later in the year, if I remember right, April, May, somewhere in there. We only got one bid, and if you remember, it was rather high, in our opinion. And so we said, I think we need to bring this back, and, if we need to adjust something in our estimate or the plans, or even just bidding it earlier, I think it would do a service to the county and hopefully knock that price down. And here I am, and it sure did. So, you can look at, the nice thing is we got this out nice and early. We ended up with 3 bidders, which was awesome, and really, makes me happy and kind of hammers home the point of the sooner we can get on people's schedules for construction, the better. I think this is a great example of that. So you see we ended up with 3 bidders, and it swung about $250,000. That's huge. And so, it was interesting. I was looking through not just the totals, but the individual line items to just see if anything jumped out, because it's still higher than our estimate, which is fair. As far as why, we don't do buildings up here, at least like this. So as far as comparables, I don't have a lot to go off of as far as concrete prices. I tripled the state average price, just for context. We don't do a lot of like reinforcing bars, that type of stuff. And so really too, so that, there's not a lot to go on. And then also who gets the bid kind of dictates a lot of those prices. So if there's some contractors up here that have their own pits, and so gravel pits, and so generally the cost of material will be a little less in those ones versus contractors who may or may not, have access to a pit. And so anyways, I think, the bids that we received were really good. It's an example of getting stuff out early, really helps our cost. And, 3 bidders, I'm very, very comfortable with that price. And so I guess, is there anybody have any questions or want to ask anything about this? Yes.
Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Robbie. I remember it was high. I just don't remember that amount. What was?
Sure. So let's see. I think it was $987.
Okay. Yeah. Great.
Yeah. So, yeah. very big difference.
So you're saying, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner
So
White.
you're saying it was $987,000 and now it is what?
$740,950.
And I would just like to thank you for doing this early and feel very fortunate we were able to get multiple bids. That is not always possible. So thank you very much for your diligence in really doing the work and getting those options for us.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this will be built where?
On our main campus. And so if you're familiar where the Global building is, the garage where we keep all the trucks, actually right next to that. There's an existing shed there we have dubbed the bee shed, not because it's a lesser shed, it's bees live in it. So that will be torn down and then it will go right there.
Where will the raccoons go when that building is
I
demolished?
think we'll move them into our office. You gotta keep them warm.
All right. Commissioner Mills, you had a comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So is that the bee shed is which cardinal direction? Is that?
Just north of the
North.
Global building, like 20 feet.
Yep,
Yeah, more than that, but yeah.
yep. And then, how are we gonna make up the difference between our estimate and the bid?
Great question. So the funding for this is through two mechanisms. One is we're allowed to use state aid funds for a percentage of certain projects like this. And so I don't have the exact mileage in front of me. It's a percentage of what we spend. I think it's a percentage, or no, it's a percentage of our state aid miles to our total miles. So in and it's some ratio like that. So, but anyways, what it boils down to is 59% of the cost can utilize state aid funds, and the remainder 41% is being made up. We've talked about our undesignated fund balance a lot at the Highway Department, and so the 41% is from that. And both of those, what we have in reserves for state aid and our fund balance, are very healthy, and this is why you have healthy balances, is that, so that we can do this.
Thank you. That's really important to know.
Yes. You're
As
welcome.
we're talking about undesignated fund balances, and so thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments for Robbie? If not, is there a motion to award the contract?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to award the contract to the bidder, Northland Construction of Duluth, for $740,950.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Storley. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll look forward to that being built and that other thing getting knocked down.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to thank the board for supporting this, because we've been wondering for a long time, how we're going to deal with the fact that we no longer have access to MnDOT's salt sand storage. And this puts us in a position now to have our own facility and be able to manage that ourselves. So it's a great move.
Absolutely. And we appreciate the fact that MnDOT has been so helpful over the years. All right. We'll move on at this point to item 5, Auditor Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, received an application from the Revolving Loan Fund for Northern Wilds Properties LLC, Amber Graham. The partnership was dissolving, and she's taking over both the building and the operation of the Northern Wilds, and is asking for a loan which has changed since what you see in your minutes here. She negotiated the price down about $10,000, so the actual request now is not 46, but 43,334, which will ask you to put that in the motion. And this, along with a bank loan and personal funds, will cover the purchase of the property and the business property. And we'll continue the operation of the Northern Wilds. I'd ask for any questions. So this was approved unanimously at the meeting on December 14th.
right, questions for Auditor Powers? So is there a motion to approve, and this would be for $43,334 for the revolving loan fund to Northern Wilds Properties?
I'll make that motion with the conditions that the committee set forth.
Yeah, so it's a 20-year, and subject to the bank loan, which is, the closing is now, they were ready to close, but now they're going to close together. They're going to use Northland Title, so.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion to approve the revolving fund loan. Is there support?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner White. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. We will move on to our next item.
All right, and I can say with complete confidence that I think this is the first time since I started with the county that we got to my part of the agenda in 12 minutes.
Commissioner White, normally our meetings do not go this quickly.
Yeah.
Well, I find there's often a hesitancy, this, I don't know if this is everywhere, but in the past life, that people, no one wants to make the motion. We're all just sitting around and we're spending time waiting when we all know that someone will make the motion, someone will second it, so just do it.
That's what we do.
Fair enough.
All right.
It moves things along.
All right. So items A, B, and C are all related, so I'm going to talk about them together. They all relate to the action that the board took on December 20th, excuse me, to accept the, or to approve the pay increases based on the compensation study that we did last year, that bring our 2023 pay rates up to 95% of our comparables. Those are the 20 counties that we looked at in the study. And so you will see that the proposed amendments to these three labor contracts include the changes for 2023, but also include the old pay table for 2024. When we negotiated these contracts that run from 2022 through 2024, we agreed to cost of living adjustments of 3% in the first year of the contract and 3.5% for 23 and 24. When we were discussing the adoption of the new pay scale at the December 13th and 20th meetings, I think there was maybe an implicit understanding that, of course, the 23 pay table would affect 24. But we did not specifically talk about how to handle 2024. And in the interest of transparency and making sure that there's an opportunity for this board to have a full public discussion about the disposition of 2024, I wanted to make sure that I didn't assume that we were simply applying the previously negotiated cost of living adjustment to the new pay table for 2024. So what you see is, the old pay table for 2024. My suggestion, in the interest of fairness and maintaining good faith with our employees, is that we keep the previously negotiated cost of living adjustment of 3.5% and apply that to the 23 pay table to come up with the pay rates for 2024. That could be done through a motion to amend these contract amendments in this meeting, or we could do that as part of the budget planning for next year. If we were to do the latter, it would create some uncertainty for our employees over the coming months. And I've talked to the business agents for the law enforcement union, labor union, and then also the 49ers, which represent our highway department. I also talked with Plamen Dimitrov, who's the president currently of the Cook County Employees Association, and explained why I was presenting these amendments as I am. Because, again, we didn't really have an explicit conversation about 24. And they had some discomfort with that, understandably, because it creates uncertainty for 2024. And in my view, I think it would be good for this board to resolve that issue today if possible. But I understand that there may be concerns about that, and so I wanted to have a chance for us all to have a discussion about how you would prefer to handle that. And so that's what I presented. And I should mention for members of the public, I did distribute what the a table showing what the 2024 pay rates would look like if we put the 3.5% cost of living adjustments on top of the 2023 pay rates. And if there's a desire to incorporate those in the amendments that I'm asking you to approve today, then we will amend the board agenda accordingly to reflect that new pay table.
Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate that this was brought forth, and I think the whole concept of transparency is really important. So I think for our public and for our new commissioner, that is a really important step, and appreciate you bringing it forward. Are there any comments or questions for Administrator Yorkie? Commissioner
Well,
White.
I have a question, and this is how I heard that not all job descriptions are up to date.
That's correct.
And one question I've had is, how are employees evaluated if you do not know what their jobs are? So how well do you know if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing? And then it goes to, how can you unilaterally or across the board give a pay raise if you don't know the job performance of the people? Just because a lot of money is being offered good wages, you need to recoup that with quality labor. So I don't understand the thinking of going ahead with giving everyone an across-the-board pay raise without really knowing what their jobs are, and then are they doing their jobs?
Sure, I appreciate the question. Just to clarify, I mean, we do know what everybody's job here is, because those responsibilities are defined by supervisors and department directors. The issue is sometimes, when things change, when a person leaves the organization, for example, sometimes it's necessary to reallocate job responsibilities. And that just happens in the course of the way things work. And so the question of, do we know what people are doing? Yes, we do, because there's communication between supervisors and staff about what needs to be done. In terms of, giving pay increases across the board, we have a step system. And what that means is that it's not a merit-based system. It is a system in which on each anniversary date, an employee gets an additional step. And that's how this works. We've had that system in place for a number of years. There are counties that do have merit-based pay increases. That's not something that we have currently. It's certainly something that we could consider, but the way things are set up currently is that the steps are in place so that people get increases on their anniversary dates. In terms of managing performance, it's not to say that if somebody is performing poorly in their job, that we just let that go and they get a pay increase every year. If there are performance issues, those are dealt with by the supervisors and the department directors. And in some situations, if performance is poor enough, a person may be put on a performance improvement plan. And so that creates, if that performance issue is not addressed, that creates a glide path potentially for that person to leave the organization. So it's not that we are just, not managing performance. We absolutely do. And we have high standards for our employees.
Well, and I guess this goes back to educating and communicating with the public, like, how does this work? I know how, and back to communications is nigh impossible to get it 100%. So, but I believe this board, using taxpayer funding for everything, has a real fiscal responsibility to be as open and to try to Not that there's anything nefarious going on, that's not the thing, and I'm not suggesting merit-based, but how do you know that your employees, I mean, in many jobs, you have employees have an annual performance evaluation. It is not to say, aha, caught you. It's like, how can we help to make you do a better job, or where can we help you? And is that happening here?
It is. It is. But it's not linked to pay increases, I think the connection that you were trying to draw.
Well, the question was back to more, do we know what our employees are doing and how well they're doing what they have been hired to do?
Yes. And so we do monitor that, and in many cases, I mean, the effectiveness of the work that our staff do is evident for the whole community to see. For example, if streets aren't being plowed appropriately, people know it, and we hear about it. If there are issues with law enforcement or with services provided by Public Health and Human Services, we hear about it. And so there are, in addition to having internal controls on employee performance, we also have sort of public monitoring of the quality of services that we provide.
And Commissioner White, I would say it's very similar, when you and I served on the school board together, it's very similar to what happens at ISD 166. Absolutely.
I know that, and so I'm trying not to keep referencing my last, how it works, but I do know that teachers are evaluated.
Right.
And there's peer evaluations, and there's administrative evaluations, and there's actually, they can put it on paper and show. I mean, and it's all confidential. I mean, it's not anything. But there is a way in place that to help improve and help the teachers at the school and the staff do as best they can for our students. And so we don't have students here, but we still have taxpayers.
Right. And I think your point about, communicating how that's done, that is important to the public, and I appreciate you bringing this forward.
It's going to come up a lot because it doesn't mean that the taxpayers or people are going to like decisions that are made, but there's a better understanding as to why the decisions were made.
Very good point. Very good point. Other questions or comments for Administrator Roach? Commissioner Story.
So the COLA for 2023 was 3.5, continuing on to 24, 3.5.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay,
That was part of the originally negotiated
Yes.
contract.
okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Hawkins.
Yeah, I voted against the original, last month, I voted against implementing this right away. I advocated for taking more time to make sure we understood the data and the long-term implications to the taxpayers in future years. So I was kind of shocked to see this on our agenda for today because I thought it was a done deal. So I did write out some of my questions here. Today is difficult that we're going back and saying, oh, we've got to amend what we did just 3 weeks ago. I get, maybe it wasn't clear to the board or to the public of what our intentions were on December 20th. I thought I understood what was the vote before us, which is why I voted no. So I do have some questions. And the first one, I guess it would be for our attorney. And if we decided that we didn't want to give a 3.5% increase, COLA increase for 2024, what are the legal ramifications? Do we have, I mean, can we say, no, we don't want to do that? How do we reopen negotiations? How does that work?
So our job is to follow through with the commitments that we made in the last agreement that we came to, and also to follow through with the commissioner's vote, which implemented the new pay and wage scales. If we didn't do either of those things, then we would have some liability. But and the 3.5% COLA that we agreed to, the agreement attached a couple of wage pay scales for 2023 and 2024. That's our current commitment, but we also have a 3.5% COLA, right? That we're
Yeah.
committed to, so. That's what our commitment is.
And if
Yeah,
I could, if I
currently.
could add, so the action that the board took on December 20th was to approve the new pay scale, taking us up to 95% of our comparables. It was not an action to amend the contracts, and that is a separate action. And so what we're asking for today is to amend the contracts to incorporate the new pay scale for '23 that was approved on December 20th. So it isn't really, it's not asking the board to approve the pay increases in concept. It's about amending the agreements to reflect those increases that were approved on December 20th.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner.
When the negotiations were done, I'm sure you had spreadsheets that showed what the, what the tax burden or what the financial burden would be going forward, so you would know how much would be required to make payroll
Correct.
in year 1, year 2, year 3. And that was based on the existing pay scale. And so I would imagine, I mean, what does it look like if you increase to 95%? Would you still be negotiating a 3.5% COLA? I mean, because that's going to be a significant increase in the financial burden going forward, and how do you pay for it? You can't just keep raising taxes. Is the, I mean, this has come up at the school, well, if we do this then there's a good chance we can't afford it. We might have to let people go. We might have to consolidate duties. And so what is that, Brady? Do you have spreadsheets that you could pull or put together that shows this is what 3.5% looks like with the old wage?
We've done
And then
that.
compare that to what it would look like, and what is the difference? What is the additional costs to
And
the,
if I could, I actually did that work. And so we did a comparison of what payroll would have been on January 1st of this year under the old pay scale, and then we also calculated the cost of the new pay scale. And the impact was just a little bit north of $1 million. I think it was like $1,008,000, something like that.
so that's every year going forward? Well, actually, it'll increase every year.
Correct.
Yeah. And some of that was covered in a contingency that had been built into the budget months ago,
Yes.
a couple $100,000. And then the rest has to be, because the levy couldn't change, the rest is fund balance. Of
Which
that
is,
increase.
so now we're going to pay people out of the fund balance. How long can you keep that up?
That
I mean, that's not a question
that would
for
just
us.
be for '23. So in '24, we would have to make an adjustment to the levy.
There was an option to use some of that federal funding that hasn't been decided yet.
Correct.
That's another option.
Yeah, and what Brady's talking about is the county is receiving an additional $2 million plus through the American Rescue Plan Act that can be used pretty much for anything except lobbying. So that would be another source of covering 2023, and I guess potentially part of 2024 if we wanted to.
24, and by that time you have to catch up and after that.
So, but it leads, so is there a long-term fiscal plan for the county, like for 5 years out? How are we going to, what's it going to look like in 3 years when we don't have federal dollars and we can't draw from our contingency? And like, how do you pay for that? You cannot just keep raising taxes. You can't keep raising the levy. It's like in your own household, suddenly the cost of propane goes up. Well, something's got to give. You can't just say, I'm not going to do that anymore. I just feel like, is there a long-range fiscal plan for the county's budget?
So if I could, we actually did, for Truth and Taxation, Brady put together a history of levy increases going back to, I think, 1990, Brady, something like that. And what it showed is that levy increases historically, they're all over the board. There have been years where we had 0% levy increases. There were other years, as recently as, I think, 2017, 2018, where we had double-digit increases. Historically, the average rate of increase has been around 4.2% or something like that. And so speaking to the increases that we had back in 2017, 2018, those came on the heels of several years in a row where we had no increases at all. And it's very attractive to say, we're not going to increase the levy. But at some point, I mean, inflation is a constant. Inflation is always happening. And so if you say we're not going to increase the levy for whatever period, at some point you have to make that up because costs are always going up. And so what this board, after Brady put together that information, the consensus of the board was we need to stay on a path where we're not having to impose significant levy increases on the taxpayers, because you're right, that's an unreasonable burden in my view. But we have to be very careful that we're not tempted to set artificially low levy increases that don't keep up with increases in the cost of living. And so the whole compensation study was really an analysis of where we are in relation to the market. And that analysis showed that we are well below what the market is paying. And so the adjustments that were approved on December 20th bring us up to 95% of our comparable counties. And what's really important is, if we aren't diligent about appropriately adjusting pay rates moving forward, what will happen in 5 years or however many years when we do our next pay analysis, we're going to find that we're below market again. We're going to have to make another big leap. And so my argument to you all is we should be making sure that our cost of living adjustments keep us in a place where we don't have to, in a few years, impose another significant levy increase to bring our pay rates up to market.
Commissioner
Cost of
White.
living adjustments are very understandable, and everyone understands inflation, that prices rise. Everybody understands that. But my question is, we have a fiscal responsibility to say down the road, we are going to be able to continue to offer these services. Excuse me, that we will have the necessary funds to do everything we're doing. Without, excuse me. Sorry, listening public. Is there a spreadsheet that shows you can just run what ifs? What if we do this, how does that impact the rest of the budget? And what if we only did this? How does this impact the rest of the government, of the budget? I know that we used to have somebody at the school, they could do that during negotiations, if we offer 2% and 1%, this is what it will look like. If we offer this is what it looked like. Can we see that? It's a little late now for what's going on here, but that's it. That's public information. That's really important stuff to know, to be able to make a determination if the board is going to commit dollars to sustaining whatever it is, even when we don't have a contingency fund and we don't have additional federal dollars. It's just, I'd like to, and I know it happens in seconds with somebody that's very adept on their computer It's like, and then it pops up, they just have it. I've seen it done, real life, many, many years, that would happen, and this is how we would do negotiations. And so, is that something we can get from you?
Well, we did that during this, so this board saw those. Maybe
Okay.
not as adept as what you're describing.
But
And
Commissioner,
so-
you're
But they saw
asking about having
yeah.
like a multi-year forecast, like here's what
Yes.
the
Yeah.
budget could look like 5 years from now.
Yeah, this is how we will pay for this.
Mhm.
And we're not going to pay for it out of our contingency, that's just in case. And we're not going to hope and pray that, oh, well, we're going to get this much for PILT or extra money from a COVID dollars or something like that. This is stand on your own, and if extra comes in, then great, but if it doesn't,
We have an old, I call it an old financial management plan that is waiting now for the CIP to be done. We have some other changes.
CIP is,
Capital improvement plan, because it's largely, a lot of it is based on capital improvement plan. And now that's been basically set aside, the capital improvements on that plan, and now we've done the study, so there will be a new dynamic to the capital improvements. And so that's got to be built into having that plan updated, so we can do exactly what you're talking about, which will have, it'll have everything. It'll have the levy, what your goals are for the levy, the goals are for capital improvements, including, improving existing buildings or whatever expansion you need. And it's adjustable year to year, of course. But right now, it's behind. It's waiting for the capital improvement plan. That's key to it, to be able to do that
Okay.
for multi-years, yeah.
So the other thing I would say about trying to do multi-year budgeting is that there are variables that we don't control and that we can't know in advance. For example, personnel expenses are the single biggest component of our budget. And those are obviously negotiated cost of living adjustments are an impact on that, but also health insurance rates, which can vary significantly from year to year. Last year, they actually went down unexpectedly. That almost never happens. This year, they went up by 7.5%. We've seen double-digit increases in health insurance premiums. So there are assumptions that we would have to make about health insurance increases, about payments in lieu of taxes, both from the state and the feds, that would have a significant impact on what the levy would be. And so we could do that exercise, and we could say, here's our best guess about how this might look 5 years from now. But it would include a lot of assumptions that, in the end, could be proven wrong. So,
but when you have the assumptions and you have a range, well, we might get this much, but we might get this much. And so a best practice would be to assume we're going to get the low amount. We're not going to get more. Somebody's not going to pay us when they're supposed to, or they're going to, because you have no control. You're absolutely right. So 5 years out is a long ways, but you have to plan. And I think as the state of the real estate that the county owns shows that there hasn't been a plan in place, and now the capital improvement, it's like, it's going to be a huge dump, but it has to be done. So to just be prepared for it, be prepared for the worst, and if you get more, then of course there'll always be ways to spend it. I'm sure of that, so. And we could be all wrong. In 2 years, it could be like, whoa, look at this. We had somebody who moved to Cook County or left, loves Cook County, and they left us $1 billion. Here we go. That would change things. However, you can't predict the future, but we, as a board, spending money, we have to prepare for it.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Hawkins.
I agree with Commissioner White. We do have a financial management plan, and I really am advocating that we update it. And I get we're waiting for our CIP plan and those numbers, but we don't have to wait to plug in assumptions now. And I agree. Let's assume we're not getting a whole lot more from the feds. I don't know if you read the news yesterday. It doesn't look hopeful. And I assume that our costs are going to jump as they have over average last 10 years. Our financial management plan, I believe, went out 10 years. The program, that spreadsheet I saw years ago.
Longer, yeah.
Yeah, so you can, and I get, we need to regularly look at that and evaluate assumptions and make changes, which, like you're right, in a spreadsheet, it shouldn't be that hard. We paid for that program and we haven't used it. I think it's very important. That's why I had wanted to see that done before we approve the new wage contract. So we could look ahead. What are the actual dollar figures going to cost us based on those assumptions? And what does that leave us for the other projects we know we have to do? I certainly want to pay employees fairly. I think that we have to do that. But there's a balance between spending, and we know we get things throughout the year that are not in our budget. I kind of want to know, well, how does that play out? Where is our fund balance 5 years from now based on those assumptions? And I get 10 years out, it's really murky. I understand that. But it's still helpful to see where you're going. So another question that I did have here was the 1 million that we said this pay scale or new pay scale is costing us this year. We have new steps that we included. Is it still $1 million, 24, 25 based on that? Or because we have more steps to give out, has the numbers been run on that, what that might cost in future years?
The cost impact analysis that I ran was, it was based on a snapshot in time, which was January 1 of this year. We did not, it's a moving target because people have different start dates. We didn't look at
Okay.
24.
All right.
But we can, obviously. But that was not, in trying to assign a price tag to this, we had to look at a point in time because it's changing all the time.
So my assumption then, it's going to cost more than $1 million just because of the step increases in future years. Am I wrong?
That will add to the
Okay.
cost.
But we don't know what that dollar amount is yet. Okay, I just,
Mhm.
was my question.
If we knew what it was, though, would it change? The wage study was looking at where we are in comparison to the market. And I'm not disputing the need to have forecasts and to do projections. I get that. But in terms of the action the board took on December 20th, that was really just to say, okay, we're not in line with the market. We need to get in line with the market, and that's what these pay adjustments do. And we agreed that, the addition of those two steps for grades 100 through 170, we talked about that. That was a known quantity. That was not something that we snuck in or anything like that. So the board knew about that. So in terms of the action that was taken on December 20th, that's, in my mind, that's a done deal, right? You agreed that we need to get up to the market. We added those two steps to the lower half of the pay scale, pay table. And so that's what we have now for 2023. I guess what would be helpful to me is, and this is a really good conversation, but we haven't previously talked about updating the financial management plan, except in the context of the CIP, the capital improvement plan. And so that was not something that we did in conjunction with the wage study, nor was there any direction from the board to say this needs to be analyzed as part of a financial projection for future years. So what I did was I estimated the cost based on a snapshot in time. And I think that was the appropriate thing to do. It was also, it would have taken a lot more time, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't invest the time to do so, but trying to bring the study to a conclusion by the end of the year so that we could make these adjustments in a timely way. There was a little bit of time pressure to get it done. If I'm hearing today that the board would like to see us update the financial management plan so that we do have projections for future years, estimates of what the levy might be, we can certainly start on that process. We have a budget advisory committee that is a really great group of folks who provides a lot of good input in matters like that. We could undertake that exercise, and it would take some time to do. I mean, it's not something we could present to you like next month, but we could start that process if that's what the board would like to see happen.
Commissioner Mills.
Madam Chair, I think in the name of efficiency and efficiency with taxpayer dollars, I think it makes sense for us to finish the capital improvement plan and then do financial, and then devote resources to updating the financial management plan. What I'm hearing is that we all want the same thing. I'm hearing that there's frustrations that it hasn't happened yet, and I think we all feel that frustration that, you know, James wants that, Brady wants that. We all want the same thing, and it all just takes time. And there's been one or two bumps in the road in the last few years that have really shook things up. But I truly believe that we're on a good path, and that we're going to get all of our ducks in a row, and we're going to do exactly what you said with the forecast and have our long-range plan. The irony is that the last time a financial management plan was done, the board did not adhere to that suggested levy amount. Over and over again, it was less than that. And so it puts us, or the future board, in a bit of a pickle, having to make adjustments like that. So my hope is that we as a board going forward can adhere to that suggested levy amount in the financial management plan. That'll put us and our future generations in a much better place. So I also wanted to share just frustrations from staff that the 2024 table was not adjusted, and I applaud James's initiative here to update that as well, to calm staff and to reassure them that was the board's intentions. I also want to applaud Administrator Yorkie for being transparent about this, because as I think Commissioner Hawkins was alluding to, what the intention of the board was may have been clear to us, but technically, for the public and in all transparency, that 2024 was not explicitly on the table. So, so kudos for being explicit,
Right.
and to help with their staff retention to try to address this now.
And Commissioner, if I could, I mean, I need to own, I probably should have requested clarification on the pay increase applying to the 24 pay table and how we were going to handle that. And I didn't do that, so that's on me.
You didn't explicitly do that, but I think the board was expecting and implying that was our intentions. It's just that spelling it out is important for all parties involved. So I'm not blaming you for anything. Yet.
Well, you have a job description, right? And so
I do have a job
the expectation
description.
is that he does his job and does it very well. That's all there is to it.
So far, A+.
And how does it, well, not to be personal, but to be personal, how does that work? How do we evaluate the administrator?
In the past, so we haven't had an administrator for all that long. But in the past, or rather 2 years ago, I took it upon myself to talk with all the department heads and get feedback regarding James and his performance, and then shared that both with the board and with James, and went over that. So it's our duty as a board to give James his job review.
So, does this happen annually?
Yes.
And are there questions that every commissioner gives input as to how each person feels the administrator is doing, and then you get it from staff, and you get it from everybody, and you have a rubric, and somebody figures it all out, and then you have a sit-down, and this would be closed meeting, with the administrator and say, these are the points where we see things are going really well, and there's a little bit of sketchiness on this, and then if need be, then an improvement plan, or way to go.
Yeah, there's not a rubric per se, but it's essentially that.
But it would be more than one person reporting, like it was, as I understand, you took it upon yourself to
As
go
board
on-
chair.
As board chair, to ask the employees. Did they put it in writing?
I put it in writing.
Okay, but they didn't put it in writing. They
Correct.
just- okay.
Yep.
So there's always the possibility that your interpretation or memory of what they told you would not be right on all the time.
It is possible, however, before I finished my conversations, I read back all my notes to them, asking if
Very
that was
good.
accurate, so, yes. I think it would be helpful, maybe not for my personality, but in general, to have a rubric or to have a standard set of questions, but I feel I get more information from people from having those candid conversations than I do from da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And so that was my style as board chair, but. we
And
as a-
my style is different.
Yeah. Not to downplay the da-da-da-da-da-da, but that's Commissioner's, Chair Sullivan's style much more than mine, so. But I don't know if there should be more involvement as a whole board, as far as interviewing all of the department heads is concerned, but it was quite a process. I think it's important that at least one person do the job. I don't think it should be split up, because that gets very different perspectives and question asking. So if we wanted to do that all together, myself, I'd be open to that. It'd be a heck of a coordination for scheduling, but
But you don't think that a paper survey would be helpful, where people have the time to digest the questions and then think about it and submit it?
yeah,
And-
I sent out questions ahead of time, but then just based on the department heads,
Was this anonymous?
no. Or what do you mean? To whom? To Administrator Yorkie? Yes, yep.
So he didn't know who said, that guy really annoys me because he chews his fingernails all the time? I mean, was it anonymous? That makes a big difference, and I have no idea about that.
Yes, that was anonymous, but yeah, not to me, right? I was
Right.
having, yeah.
Yeah.
But
For the record, I don't chew my fingernails. I just want to make that clear.
That will be on the quiz. Okay.
Well,
I
good-
lost my train of
good-
thought.
Good things to discuss.
Madam Chair, if I could. So I, of course, welcome the opportunity to have an annual review. But I also tell staff, if that is the only time that you're providing feedback on performance, you're doing it all wrong. And I would hope that throughout the year, at these meetings, before meetings, after meetings, if there's something I'm doing or not doing, I would hope that you would bring it to my attention. It is really important to have constant feedback. Otherwise, expectations are not clear, and it isn't possible for me to do my job at the level that you want me to. So getting that continual feedback is really important. I think the annual review, in terms of having a record of, feedback from staff and so on, I think that's really important. But on a day-to-day basis, I welcome feedback at any time on things that I can do better.
Continuous feedback, continuous improvement. That's what we
In
should all
theory.
be about.
Yeah, in theory, it's
Yeah.
good.
Commissioner Hawkins?
I would like, I think we should make sure we have good discussions about what's going on. But I'd like to go back to the financial management program. because I do think that is extremely important. And speaking to Commissioner Mills about the board didn't follow the plan, that plan was using faulty assumptions, specifically a new jail that we didn't need. So a plan, you have to make sure you agree on the assumptions that are made into that plan. And that's why I'd like to start with, this is where we are today. This is where we will be in '24 based on what we know. And then let's talk about what other assumptions we want to think about for the future years. Because I get, we might have capital improvement, we will have capital improvement projects coming in that we don't know of yet. But let's put in what we already know and start with that. Let's get started on that because it is extremely important going forward.
Commissioner Mills.
How much energy or time does it take to put together or update the financial management plan?
That is something that Ellers
Yeah,
actually did for us last time,
They
correct?
created it initially, partly because there are bonding financial advisors, and there was a lot of assumed bonding in that plan. I think that'd be the place to start, with them at least. We may take it, I expect we would take it over then ourselves and run it, and maybe go back to them with, we don't have the CIP going out, but
CIP,
the
capital
capital
improvement.
improvement plan going out, because we haven't had those discussions. That plan has had a capital improvement, you know, a new jail, a new this, a new that, all throughout it, which is where it isn't useful the way it is right now. But perhaps we could do it without a long-term capital plan, just to see, have the same format, and just to see maybe 2, 3, 4 years out without the large capital improvements that may come later through discussions.
So not much time and energy?
I don't know, let's explore it, we'll talk to Ellers and see. That'd be the quickest way to get it started.
I don't have a problem with anything that doesn't disrupt where we're trying to go right now, and I think I absolutely agree how important it is. It's just the timing and the strategy, and I see the most efficient, cost-effective path to finish the CIP. There are assumptions we do know from that as far as deferred maintenance. And the old financial management plan, just to be clear, I think that's where our differences are, is possibly just time on the board and more familiarity with where things are at and where they could be going. But that previous financial management plan, with the faulty assumptions, I think it's more of an issue of scope with those assumptions, because the money that was going to be used to pay for the bonding, to pay for the jail, was put into the budget, just not towards that. It was towards the building, or the building fund, because we knew that capital improvement projects would be needed and coming. It's just, and so the details are important to get it accurate, but I think there was enough of our needs were known to give some kind of path forward there.
Well, the expenses on that plan included the debt payment. You take out that debt payment, the levy would have decreased on future years. I did have a conversation with Bruce Kimmel from Ellers while back, that this is a plan, it's a spreadsheet. We purchased from Ellers. They developed it, they gave it to us as a county, and it sat in somewhere. But I did ask him about it. It's a spreadsheet that somebody just goes through. He says it's something that should be used regularly, updated when you have new assumptions. It's supposed to be really easy to just say, oops, no, let's take that part out. I'm certainly willing to learn it if I could get access to it.
I've seen a printout of it, a PDF. I've not actually seen the Excel sheet.
I never had possession. Jeff had the plan in his possession. And so,
Well, I believe
I
our
only saw
financial
printouts.
coordinator had a link to it.
Well, it should
Commissioner
not,
Mills?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, everything you've said, Commissioner Hawkins. It reminds me much about what my expectations are for the capital improvement plan. It needs to be updated regularly when there's any change, any information that we know of, any new buildings, any updated boilers, all that stuff. The same is true with the financial management plan. How easy it is if it's as easy as updating a spreadsheet, hey, that's awesome, but if it hasn't been updated since 2017, I think that's going to be a little bit harder of a task, but I don't know. I'm not the one doing it, so.
it will.
Commissioner
I mean,
White,
I
you
would
had-
I would start with them. We'd give them
Start
the
with them.
information, fill it in, bring it to current status, and then we'll take it over.
and to
Commissioner White.
say that, well, it's commitment, it's diligence. It's a fiscal responsibility, and you just discipline yourself that we have to go back and look at this. We have to go back and look at this. We have to go back and look at this. And I do know that at the school, if there are things pending, we get a report from the agent, the fiscal agent.
Financial officer.
Yeah, and she would say, she would be there and say, well, what happens if, or would say, this is where we've spent the COVID dollars, we've got this much left, and we have some flexibility, so you could pay for this training, or you could pay for, and it's not that the board micromanages, it's just that they are kept abreast so they can intelligently say to people that want to know, how come, or where did that come from, and wait a minute. And all these, if we have a management plan, that's public information, yes? Everything is public here.
And there are reports that Brady regularly creates for us all. And I know you haven't had an opportunity to, see those in your short time, but you will see those.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is a different scale than the day-to-day operations, and
Yes.
we do that, of course, but
But we
this is a
need both.
long-term plan.
Yep, absolutely. Well, let's swing back to our labor contract agreements here. We have law enforcement, the Cook County Employees Association, and the 49ers. And what I see is it's important to follow through with our commitment and what was our understanding at our meeting in December and take care of that. And then looking at a financial management plan, updating that is a separate piece at this point in time. But I think what we could do is move forward with amending our contracts with the COLA at 3.5%, and make it clear to everybody that that is our intention. I think before we just weren't clear, we weren't articulate, and so I think we could move forward with that.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Mills.
I would like to make a motion to approve Amendment B, amended with the 2024 pay table that includes the 3.5% COLA increase, to be consistent with the board's intentions, but to be all technically legit there, for the 22 to 24 labor contract, with all three of our bargaining units.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion?
I have a
Commissioner White.
question. I wasn't here when this vote was taken, and listening, I thought the cart is being put before the horse. And so I would have voted no at that point in time. And so can I abstain from this? Because I understand honoring the commit, or the obligation, or your word that this was the intended, it was, cost of living and it wasn't in writing, and so that's what's happening now. But on the other hand, I still think the cart is before the horse, in that without a thorough understanding of, and perhaps this is something, maybe it's my own shortcoming, in that I need to, with the department heads, go over and have them tell me exactly what their different staff members do and why. I mean, why? Particularly with Health and Human Services, which is a department that has been just growing by leaps and bounds, to the point where now there's discussion that maybe they need a new building. So I just feel I need to honoring what was promised is important, but on the other hand, I would have been a no vote on going forward. I mean, is it imperative to do all of this right now? I mean, why can we not put off doing the 95% pay?
The 95% is done for this year. That decision has been made. Here, we're also talking about for 2024, including and making it clear that we're adding the 3.5% COLA.
Okay.
And that was our intention. It was understood, but we were not articulate with it at our meeting.
And I understand that. So the 95%, this is where the county's going forward, and we have now committed the budget to $1.some million.
Right. What we're doing is amending the
Yes,
contracts.
I understand that we are, what this part of this is.
Okay.
So,
Madam Chair, if I could, not
Sure.
to get us off track, but Commissioner White referenced a new building. We're not there.
no, I understand that,
So
but there
there's
has been
just-
talk.
Just for the public's understanding, there's no proposal for a new building. And I just
No,
want to be
there isn't.
really
There isn't.
clear about that. We do know that we're short on space in Public Health and Human Services offices. How that's going to be addressed remains to be seen.
Right, absolutely right. That's the reason. There's no anything being built brand new anywhere. Take that off of Facebook. That's not happening. I mean, but these are the wonderful social rumor mill that I just contributed to it. I'm sorry. No, there's no plans that I'm aware of to build anything new. There's nothing concrete except that we have buildings that have to be managed.
Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner White, for the questions. As far as the timing and the why now, why not later, it's really about staff retention and the needs that we're hearing from staff. And so I think it's most respectful to take care of it now. We do have the option, as Administrator Yorkie mentioned, to wait for the 2024 table. That makes staff less comfortable. When staff aren't comfortable,
They don't do their job, is that what you're saying?
it's harder to do as good a job. And it's my intention to keep staff here as much as possible. And so I'm fully committed to doing everything I can to make sure they have what they need.
Because all of the staff works for the people of Cook County, and so
Correct.
we're really focusing on keeping the staff happy, no matter what it costs.
No, because the staff serve the county, and so if the staff are serving the county well, then the county benefits.
So if they're doing their job well, and if they're not doing their job well, it's the board's fault?
Not necessarily, but we're the buck stops here, as they say, so
Yes.
ultimately, it is our responsibility
To keep them happy.
to make sure that they're well taken care of and have what they need. Happiness is a next level that I sure hope we can, but I think that's not always the easiest thing.
Right, and so their job performance, this is all hypothetical. I am not dissing this is hypothetical, but I'm not trying to diss the people that work for the county. But if you are working in any position and you're not, you expect it or you want whatever you want, there are fiscal limitations to your employer's ability to pay you more. There are limits, and if your employer cannot pay you more, regardless of how good you are, you either continue to perform well and accept that fact, or you move on. I get that, how that goes. And so, if as an employer, I have an employee who is now not doing their job as expected and as required because they're not happy, because they want to make more, my personality says, you are not contributing to the health of my business in this situation. And maybe you should find somebody that will pay you more.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, if I could, you know, we're talking about performance alongside compensation, and we do not have a performance-based pay system. That is not to say we don't manage performance and that we don't expect high performance from our employees. When there are performance issues, those are addressed. The question of, you know, if somebody feels they're not being appropriately compensated, how does that affect their performance? That's a matter of speculation. Some people have, you know, some people may not be affected at all by that. Others may think, well, okay, I'm not being paid fairly, I'm not going to do my job as well. But performance is managed, and we expect high performance, and we are trying to create conditions, and it's been my goal since I got here, to create an environment where people feel valued and feel motivated to do their best for the citizens of Cook County. That is the goal. That's my goal. That is our goal, right? And if we create those conditions, then we are providing public service. We're serving the residents of this county to the best of our ability, and that's what we should be doing. Pay is part of that. We know that we were below market, and we know, and Leah Ekstrom, who's here in the room with us today, will be sharing information at next week's Committee of the Whole meeting about attrition that we've seen over the last year. And we know the last couple of years, we've seen more people leave this organization than any time in the past. And that is in no small part due to our compensation structure. We know that people have been leaving the organization to go elsewhere where they can make more. And so the question of pay as it relates to performance, the important piece here is we need to have a salary structure that allows us to attract good people and keep good people.
Do we have exit surveys as to why people?
We do exit interviews.
Interviews,
Yes. And we know, I mean, the reasons people leave are vary. Some people retire, other people take jobs that pay more. There are a variety of circumstances under which people leave the organization. But we do know that we are losing people because our pay structure has not kept up with the market.
Very, very good discussion.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So we have a motion and a second. Any further comments or remarks? Commissioner Stoyl.
To Commissioner White's question about abstaining.
Oh, yes, I asked that. But I understand now, I am only voting to honor what was
Correct.
Not delineated in the original
Correct.
contract negotiations or wage proposal. I understand that.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second.
Well, I guess I'll just clarify my vote. I understood my vote 3 weeks ago to include this.
Correct.
I
And
voted
I did
no.
as well.
So I feel like an in-between here of, this is how I felt 3 weeks ago. I still feel that. Still honoring the fact, I respect our democratic process in the US.
Yeah.
It passed. I put this behind me. So now I feel this struggle of, wait a minute, really? That's how I felt. I still feel it. I respect that my fellow commissioners decided to move forward. But if I'm honoring that vote, how do I say now I think it's okay? So there's my struggle. We'll see which way I raise my hand. but I just want to clarify.
Appreciate that. Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Hawkins, for talking about that. It's probably not the only time, right? That we as a board vote on
Yeah.
something and we don't always agree, and then we have to, as a board, accept that as if we did vote for it, more or less. And so, just thinking about what you just said, how I would trick myself is that it's a given. This 2023, that's what it is, right? Pretend we never had to vote on it. This is just truth. So what we're considering is whether we want to update the 2024 pay table to be consistent with truth, or if we want to have further discussions to go against that.
I guess,
Yeah.
yeah, I had wanted to have more discussion about that prior to enacting that. I did. So there we go. That's my dilemma.
Other comments? All in favor? Aye.
Hi.
Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Motion carries 3-2.
Madam Chair? Just as a follow-up too, for reference as far as abstaining is concerned, we do have a legal obligation to vote whenever it is not illegal, or potentially
Okay.
illegal as far as a conflict of interest is
Sure.
concerned, or a perceived conflict of interest. If we do abstain, then we have to give the explicit reason for that abstention, and it's very limited.
Okay.
So
Thank you for
conflict of
clarity
interest,
for
I don't
that.
know what else, but yeah.
And it does not happen often. It's a very rare circumstance on this board. Other boards, you might find that it occurs quite frequently, but generally not here. Commissioner Storley, you had
Thank
your
you.
hand up.
I would say from my experience with Commissioner Mills working on a labor contract, we did a 1 year in the COVID year. That's why we're kind of off right now. It's intense, and it's a learning curve, and it is sleepless nights thinking, how can we work with our employees, the 3 different labor unions, and how can we be fair, and how can we do all that? So it won't come up now until 24 to work on 25, 20, if we keep the 3-year contract, which is really the best to work with. 1 year was only because of COVID. So it's a lot. It's a lot to learn, but I appreciate Minister Yorkie, slogging through the whole thing, and all the labor union leaders, and there is a follow-up with, you still are meeting with some of the representatives from the labor unions, I understand?
Well, yes, so we do have a labor management committee currently, which met monthly through the end of last year, and now is going to, well, let's see, we had a lot of conversation about, we were going to go to every other month meeting schedule, and I don't even remember where that conversation ended up.
Not yet, because 2 of the groups feel like a lot of their concerns have been addressed, but there is still a group that has a fair number of concerns, and so we're going to stick with the monthly
That's right.
meeting until we make some more progress there. So it shouldn't be too much longer, and we'll scale back, I think.
But in any case, that whole the Labor Management Committee process is designed to work through issues of mutual concern outside the context of negotiations, because when you're negotiating, the dynamics are totally different. What we're trying to do is make progress on some issues that, something like paid family leave, which now there's state legislation being considered around that. And I should mention, as part of my report that I was going to give you, I've volunteered to participate in an advisory group that's being hosted by the Association of Minnesota Counties to examine that legislation and to help prepare the county's position. I think generally there's a lot of support for the idea, but the question is, how does that interact with or affect current benefits that we offer? This is something that would apply to all employers in the state. And we just want to make sure that in terms of our collective bargaining agreements, that whatever the legislature ultimately approves, that it does not conflict with or conflict with those agreements or step on the county's rights. So, but another thing I wanted to say related to labor contracts is Commissioner Storley is right. We did negotiate 3-year contracts that run through the end of 2024. In the last round of negotiations, we got feedback from the bargaining units that we always save negotiations for the latter half of the last year of the contract. And by doing that, we are negotiating after the preliminary levy is set in September. And so that basically limits what we can negotiate for the next year. And so what we have committed to doing is beginning negotiations for the next contract period at the beginning of 2024, so that whatever is negotiated can be included in the preliminary budget and levy that is set in September. To us, that makes a lot of sense. It addresses the concern that staff have that, hey, we can't really negotiate for the first year of the contract because you guys have already made that decision. So, and it also, from a budgeting standpoint, if we find ourselves in a position where we have to go above and beyond what the preliminary levy has established, then we do have to dip into fund balance. And so it just gives us more predictability in budgeting if we start that cycle earlier.
And I would just like to add that, as I was a member of the school board, I was on the negotiating team, or part of the negotiate for the teachers and for both Teamster groups. So I have experience with the negotiations. With that, so.
All right. Well, we'll move on now to administrator updates.
So I
Kind of
mentioned.
segued into that.
Yeah, so I mentioned the advisory committee that I'm participating in, and as I get more information through that process, I will, of course, share that with you all. The other big thing that I wanted to mention, we discussed last month about our plans to begin the development of our strategic plan. And that's something that at yesterday's meeting of the management advisory team, we talked about how we're going to organize to do that work. The last time that we planned to undertake this process, we were going to work with a consultant. I asked the team yesterday, is everybody comfortable with simply doing that internally and not having a consultant involved? There was consensus that is feasible, and so we're going to be doing it that way. The goal is to have a plan completed by mid-year, and the process will involve a steering committee made up of several members of the management advisory team. We would also like to have a county board member involved in that steering team, because we want to make sure that there's good coordination. Using the compensation study working group as a model, Commissioner Mills, I felt it was tremendously valuable to have you involved in those discussions and to be able to share your perspectives with the board as we were moving forward on that. And I think where the strategic plan is concerned, likewise, it would be really useful to have a commissioner on that steering committee who's like involved in every step of the way and can report back to the other board members on where we are in the process and kind of how things are working. Because I can give you my report on how things are going. That's my perspective. I'm not elected, of course. And I think it's really useful to have a commissioner as part of that process. So part of my ask today was going to be for you all to agree to assign one of you to serve on that steering committee, which will be meeting every other week for the next several months. April, that's going to be on a...
First meeting would be on the 27th, 12:30 to 2.
Okay, so the meetings are going to be on Fridays from 12:30 to 2. And so if that works for anyone's schedule, again, I would welcome your participation in that group.
So I oftentimes have meetings out of the county on that day.
Okay.
Are there other commissioners? I'm thinking because I just updated our schedules last night and was looking at meetings. Commissioner White, are you available, I think, on Fridays?
Yes. Yes, I am. However, my learning curve is pretty intense at this moment in time, and I don't know if I would be the best commissioner to be on it. Now, in a year, yeah, right now, I don't.
See, and I was thinking fresh eyes.
That's exactly where I was going.
But part of your motivation was so that you wouldn't be on it.
Yeah,
Oh, I actually thought it sounded like fun, but I thought, no, Deb should learn first.
I really think it would be a great learning experience.
help them.
Commissioner Mills?
And what an opportunity for you as well, to get to know
Oh,
the
to
department
network
heads and,
learn.
yep. You would,
Oh,
it's-
yeah,
Should we
you
have two
betcha.
commissioners?
Yeah.
So there was support of.
I think there should be one commissioner. I don't think we want to get too
And-
involved, but go ahead,
Madam
Commissioner
Chair,
Mills.
Commissioner White, I don't think you're expected to know anything and just share.
And I don't really have to be friendly either, right?
It helps, but you do you. But it's just helpful to have that perspective so that you can see what's going on and you can inform us. You don't have to know, like, necessarily contribute. I'm sure you will contribute, knowing you. I think there's nothing to be uncomfortable there, and you'd be wonderful.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be uncomfortable. Okay, sign me up.
All right, there you go.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So we're going to be, again, undertaking that process. And in addition to the steering committee, we're going to be engaging other members of the management advisory team throughout the process. There will be regular reports to the board. We're also going to be involving supervisors and frontline staff as we move forward, because you cannot have an effective plan if you don't have buy-in from everybody in the organization. And so giving our staff the opportunity to understand the direction that we're taking, to provide feedback on that direction, to provide their input, and especially to provide input on how those strategic priorities affect service delivery is going to be really important. So we'll have staff involved in that, and then also there will be, and we're working out how we're going to do this, but there will be consultation with external partners and customers, because they have a unique perspective on our organization that we really need to take into account. So that's the process. I expect by May at the latest, we'll have a draft plan to share with you all. And I expect that by the end of June, we'll have a final plan to ask you to approve. The other thing that I emphasized at the management advisory team meeting yesterday is plans are great, but if you put it on a shelf and you don't do anything with it, then you might as well not have wasted your time. And so doing the plan is only the first step. Using the plan is the more important step. And so having a regular process where the department directors are checking in. In my last job, we had a departmental strategic plan where every quarter the division directors would get together with the director and with me as the deputy director to talk about progress toward objectives. And so we would sit down and look at all the action steps, and there was a color-coded system where, if it's green, that means we're making appropriate progress. If it's yellow, then we're making some progress but not sufficient. If it's red, we're not making progress at all. And so that exercise allows us to make sure that we are addressing all the action steps and making progress toward objectives. And that piece is going to be every bit as important as developing a good plan that makes sense for the organization and that allows us to be resilient and ensure services into the future. And as I'm thinking about kind of what the priorities are going to be here, I think organizational resilience is really important. The last couple of years with the pandemic and with the churn that we've seen in staffing has really made it clear that we need to have processes and systems in place that survive staff turnover. We need to have, the capital improvement plan is a great example of that. A big part of what we're doing with that right now is taking information that primarily or exclusively resides in Brian Silence's head and putting it onto paper. Because, you know, when Brian decides that it's time to retire, if we don't have that information in a place where others can access it and track it, we're going to be in a world of hurt. And so having systems in place that survive staff turnover and other external changes that the organization confronts, whether it's, you know, economic downturns or what have you, we need to have systems that enable the organization to be resilient and to keep operating. And in my mind, that's one of the biggest things that we need to address through this plan. Another thing that we're doing, I think I mentioned this previously, is working with folks from the Auditor's Office, Human Resources, MIS, that's Management Information Systems, or IT department, and then also the Assessor's Office to examine our HR and financial management software to begin the process of updating those systems, because the software that we are using currently is old, and that's an organizational vulnerability, right? We're using systems that are operated by the state, and in some cases, there are fewer and fewer counties using those systems, and at some point, we expect the state's going to say, you know what, we can't support this anymore because not enough folks are using it. We need to be ready for those kinds of changes, and we need to have systems in place that allow us to continue operating even as those changes occur. So those are the kinds of things that I expect to focus on in this plan. I'm really excited to be beginning this process, and I think we have a good team in place to make sure that we're going to develop a good plan.
Any questions or comments for Administrator York? Really exciting to hear about that and to get an idea of our timeline, and I'm looking forward to that. That's for sure. Anything else?
Is that, yeah, I was going to ask, is that your update? Is that?
That is my
It's a good update. I just wanted to recognize the amount of time that Commissioner White has now
Committed to?
For Fridays, and I thought we should amend the committee list to add that on.
I will
It's
certainly
already
do that.
on my calendar. Somebody put it on there.
Already done.
Well done.
I couldn't even get to the calendar to do it, and I'm looking, it's already there, so thank you.
That's April.
I am speaking to April, the person in charge, or keeps everything going in any organization. You could have everybody else go away, but if you have the secretarial or those people still there, everything's just fine for a while. It's true, though,
Touche.
It is true.
so thank you.
And so I'd make the motion to amend our committee assignments so that Commissioner White has the steering committee on there for strategic plan.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. All in favor of that addition? Aye.
You can't be exhausted yet.
It's a resignation, a sign of resignation. And as someone had asked, don't you have enough people that are mad at you already? Why would you want to be a county commissioner? Well, so everyone knows it's not an issue with me. It's the age, man, it's the age.
All right, I love it. Let's move on now to commissioner reports and meeting updates. Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. In light of our Christmas outages and things that we all had to live through, I did briefly contact Mike Keyport, and hopefully at our next meeting, he will bring some updating and some suggestions as to how we can cope with, my situation was 29 hours without any electricity, and just maybe some guidelines. We can all know how to deal with our car if we're going to travel with blankets and snacks and flashlights and all of that. But I think this was such an unusual event in our county that I had some conversation with folks in the West End at our senior lunch, and it was interesting to hear from people who said, well, you called me, but I didn't want to leave my home. I needed to stay there. So we need to discuss, a community center, Birch Grove, those types of things have been used in the summer when we've had fires, but now we have winter, and I don't even know if our township buildings are backed up with anything, so I need to find that out too. So Mike will come at our next meeting and give us a good report on that. He's already meeting with business people and so forth too, what to do without your credit card machine and how to handle all the things that happen when people are all of a sudden not having electricity. So hopefully he will do that next meeting.
Other commissioner reports. Commissioner Hawkins.
Yeah, so we had a community center meeting, first week in January. I just want to report that we're updating contracts for the kitchen incubator and the hockey ice, and YMCA is being talked about, still worked on, and I guess they've been forwarded to you, and we're just waiting for County Attorney Hicken to approve those, so those are in the works. And we're also working on a strategic plan. We talked about, should we wait until after the county does? And we decided, no, the community center needs to know what they're doing too, and we'll work it into the whole county plan later. But in light of that, we are in need of 2 board members on that committee. So public, 2 openings, and really like to have some visioning taking place there moving forward. So I want to make sure, if you know of anybody, encourage them to apply.
And so, Madam Chair, if I could, yes, I did talk with Sarah Waddle about the Board of Trustees conversation about putting together its strategic plan, and I think it should have one, of course. My suggestion to Sarah was that it might be good to pause while we put together the county plan so that they can kind of integrate together. And I don't want to unduly impede the work of the Board of Trustees, but it seems to me that it would be good to put the center's plan, align it with kind of what the county priorities are. So, and if there's a need to have further conversation about that, I'd be happy to come to the next board meeting.
Okay. Yeah, no, we just talked about the fact that the community center, there are so many things going on there. And where should we, because Sarah cannot just do absolutely everything. Where should the focus, and they're doing a really good job. I'm so impressed with Leanne's ability to track data now.
They're quite a team.
And so we've got some information and trying to decide, okay, where should the resources be focused? What do we like to happen? And envisioning in relation to our CIP plan, what would we suggest the county focus on? But so multiple discussions on varying levels that at some point need to be integrated into one.
Yep.
Commissioner Hawkins, you mentioned for our community, there are a couple spots available on the board. Where can our community members get those applications? Where can they find them?
I believe their applications are on the website, isn't that correct? You can apply online.
Absolutely. All right. Just wanted to make sure that we got that information out there. All right. Commissioner Mills, any updates?
I have nothing to share at this time, thank you.
All right. I can say I had a really good meeting last week with the Rainy River, Vermilion River, One Watershed, One Plan. We developed a summary of public kickoff events. You might remember here in Cook County, we had an event at the Seagull station back in August. And there were other opportunities for the public to engage in St. Louis County and in Lake County, both at the cities of Orr and Ely. And the goal is to reach people across the watershed, gather all different kinds of diverse viewpoints on our watershed, what we value, what are our priorities, what kind of activities do we want to see going on in our area. And then what we did at the meeting is review issues and discuss who takes the lead. There are a lot of different entities in addition to the 3 counties that participate, the U.S. Forest Service and Bowser, which is the Board of Water and Soil Resources for the state of Minnesota. And so anyway, we did review the issues, and we're looking forward to our next meeting. And then yesterday, I had a chance with Grace Grenager and Nancy Deming to talk with a representative of Wonder School about childcare here in Cook County. And Wonder School is a national corporation that works with government agencies as well as individual providers. They start, run, and find high-quality childcare throughout the nation. They're in 47 different states. And what they do is they empower individuals in home daycares to run sustainable daycare businesses, childcare businesses. And they work with the the state of Michigan. They work with the state of Nevada. I was particularly interested in getting more information from the state of Nevada because they have some counties that are very remote and very geographically large, very similar to Cook County. So we'll be getting some information from them. They do a lot with just technology tools to help providers and that type of thing. But anyway, it was an initial conversation that I thought went really well. And then I turned over the reins for the Cook County Council on Aging to Commissioner White, and maybe you want to give an update on that meeting.
Yeah, like new girl. I got to attend the Council on Aging yesterday down at the hub, and I knew only one person. I finally got to put a name to the face, or a face to the name that I've read about. But it's a high energy, really, it's a great group, and they're doing all sorts of different things, and there's it just proved that I have a lot to learn, but the energy coming out of this group was palpable. So, oh, and I'm going to jump the gun maybe, but here's the advertisement. They were considering, and they have, a gourmet coffee down at the senior center, so drop in the morning and have some coffee.
And Thursdays, there's coffee and conversation. It's a men's group that they
Yes,
started.
that's right, I heard about that, so,
How early can you drop in for coffee?
9
it was just,
a.m.
it was
9
a
a.m.
general conversation that I took part in, and so,
9 a.m.
sure,
coffee?
she was the last person, she would know.
That's before our meeting, though.
Right.
Right, yeah, okay. Just checking for the coffee availabilities.
Well,
Great
They have-
coffee provided by Tyler Dean
yes.
from the coffee
okay.
that he is
Do you recall
roasting.
the name of the coffee?
I don't remember which blend it is.
But it is hoped that the community, no, where am I? That the hub will be grinding their own beans
Oh,
to make you fresh coffee.
Nice, there you go, Brady.
So, the Council on Aging, I signed up to be marginally part of marketing. Give me points. Here we go. I already did something.
You're on the road. You're on the road. Well, any other meeting updates or experiences commissioners would like to share? All right, well, we have some meetings to note. We have a meeting for the new Gunflint Trail, or multi-use trail, on January 24th here in the Commissioners' Room at 6 p.m. with our highway engineer leading the charge on that. And then he will also be leading the Gunflint Trail Visioning Session on January 26th. That is a hybrid Zoom session, and then also at the Mid-Trail Fire Hall, and that'll be from 6 to 8 p.m. And the Zoom link can be found on our agenda today and is on the county website. And then in addition, we have our Community Leadership and Joint Powers Committee meeting via Zoom on February 9th at 5:30. And lastly, but certainly not least, we're really excited with all our January anniversaries for employees. So we have Adriana Briss. Thank you for your years of service, 2 years of service in the auditor's office. Nathan Carlson, Highway Department, 1 year. Leah Ekstrom, we appreciate your 8 years here with the county and in charge of human resources. Martina Johnson with PHHS for 16 years. Christine Ordman, PHHS, 1 year. Holly Schroeder, the Recorder's Office for 24 years. Brian Silence in our Maintenance Department, 23 years. Nanette Silence in the Highway Department for 12 years. Zadie Tofty, PHHS, 1 year. Mitch Travis in Land Services, now for 6 years. And April Zimmer, our Administrative Assistant, and the one that's in charge, 4 years. And then we have some milestone anniversaries with Brody Smith at the Recycling Center for 5 years, and K-9 Eddie. I'm going to get some dog biscuits and go over to the sheriff's office to celebrate 5 years for K-9 Eddie. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Actually, Madam Chair, before we adjourn, I'd just like to note that Monday is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and county offices will be closed.
Thank you for reminding us. I appreciate that. All right. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. Is there support? Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner White?
Oh, you have to raise your hand.
Just checking, just checking. We are.